No one is talking about how in 11.1.5 the ancient Arathi prophecy from the start of the War Within is going to end, and it is not going to be pretty. The Song of Renelish says that apparently the remains of gods will be scattered across the battlefield, very likely the various parts of old gods we are discovering all over Khaz'Algar with no context. However, the Forgotten One, potentially the fifth old god, will say that when the last star fades, the Emperor's crown will weigh heavy with sins of 1,000 years. Likely, when Beledar's light fades, something is going to happen to that mysterious emperor. Apparently, he might not be as nice as some would like to believe. What are these sins that are going to catch up to Thoradin the Knight, and who even really is this guy? Why is he hundreds of years old? Are we going to be facing off a very powerful fanatical empire soon? While having the best deals on the market for all games and software, Gamivo just added mobile top-ups for your favorite mobile games with the best prices that you can get with my Gamivo link in the description below. Best of all, if you use my code DORON, your discount will be even bigger, so make sure to use my link in the description and the code and check out Gamivo. So by this point, there is no way you have not heard about the Arathi Emperor, and a bit more than half a year ago everyone was talking about him and the Empire, and that has all quieted down, but I feel like that shouldn't be the case because the Song of Renelish, the Arathi prophecy that we got, is now making more sense than ever before. Previously we read this, we thought this was some crazy Arathi lore, who even knows what it means, but seeing that the story has progressed further, there is a lot more context to this prophecy. So, real quick backstory, the Arathi Emperor is apparently called Thoradin the Knight. He's a light emperor, very dedicated to the light, very religious. His people do seem to worship him in a way, as he has a lot more authority than other leading figures. He's ruling the Arathi Empire, which is actually an expedition that went from the Eastern Kingdoms, but they never considered themselves to have fallen apart. Thoradin the Knight actually has the same name as the original Arathi Emperor that founded the Empire, which might imply that he is in fact a direct descendant. Another very interesting thing is that these guys are actually a mix between elves and humans, so they share some elven language, they're riding lynxes just like the Blood Elves, and this second Arathi Empire is not a human empire but like a human-elven mix, so think like Lordran and Qualtelas. Even more interestingly, Thoradin is said to be hundreds of years old, so much older than a regular human, which, while I did say it could imply that he might be a light-born undead held together by the light, as we had seen the Arathi practicing necromancy, it is also very likely that he is just a half-elf. As we know, elves live thousands of years, so if you're trying to imagine the picture of this guy, think something more akin to Lortimar as opposed to a heavily armored Varian Vrin. Now, here is the main thing. A decade before the War Within, he received a vision from the light. This actually happened at the same time when Velen received the vision that we had previously seen by the light. The only difference is that this guy acted right away. He gathered the strongest of his warriors, created an expedition, sent it to find Hellfall to fight in a battle called Renelish. Renelish apparently meaning the final battle between the light and the dark. Since the expedition got teleported to this place, the underground crystal, everyone thought that they had just randomly crashed the field on their mission somewhere, but it looks like they are exactly where they are supposed to be. As Anduin stated, it is likely that the vision itself was the Radiant Song that the Emperor had gotten, and it seems to be coming from the giant crystal called Beledar. Now, real quick, if you're wondering why don't they just portal to the mainland, the real simple answer is that all their mages died in a crash, so originally they were supposed to be connected to the Emperor and they were supposed to get reinforcements. Now, to not bore you with the lore of these guys that you already know, I want to cover the prophecy of Renelish. The Arathi have told us, and they seem to be debating themselves what it even means. It is sort of like holy scripture to them. Now, real quick before I get into it, I just want to say that it is all obviously based on Beledar, and recently we got some really interesting information on Beledar. While the Titans seemingly lied that this is just a classification of Azeroth's essence, there was a question: why is Azeroth's essence, if it is that, covered in like Naru runes? Why is it giving out straight light energy? Why is it turning into the void? I mean, all of these are properties of light objects because we know light can also turn into the void. Well, people have actually connected this to a really interesting quote from a book called 1,000 Years of War, talking about Illyria. It talked about how she saw the forces of the light fighting the void, and she saw darkened worlds burning in holy fire. This was referring to the constant crazy war between the light and the void that is ongoing in the universe that we have never actually personally encountered. Most interestingly, it said this line, and keep this line in mind. She saw millions of creatures encased in luminous crystals the size of mountains, sustained by the light and unable to die. Now, people have connected this quote to Beledar, and it makes so much sense when you think about it. There is apparently that 5th Old God mural in the Nerubian Kingdom. There is a void crystal in the mural itself. The Nerubians are really after this crystal itself. Even more interestingly, the crystal is apparently turning into the void all the time. Now, in 11.1.5, we're getting an event called Nightfall, which seems to be the final Nerubian push for that crystal. Now, remember the old quote that may refer to Zelda? The fall of night reveals her true face. She will bring only ruin. So the possibility was that the light may have attacked Azeroth at one point and trapped the old god into that crystal. Now, this is something I've covered in the previous video that you can check out in great detail about Beledar, but I really want to quickly now put a spotlight on the Arathi prophecy that perfectly aligns with this and sort of adds even more context, and then you can decide for yourself whether this makes any sense. All of this is described in a prophetic text called the Song of Randilash, the Song of the Final Battle. It says, the Arathi formed a constellation of courage against the darkness. The Harbinger's forces, nightmares of legs and claws, skittered across the battlefield. Their grotesque dance echoed the rhythm of a world teetering on the brink. All of this is obviously referring to what has already happened in the Nerubian battle, but here is where it starts to get really good. The wall, built with the living rock of titans, bore the weight of the conflict. This honestly seems to be referring to the fact that this battle is happening within the titan machinery of the world core, which is really all just one giant titan facility shaped by the titans, so Khaz'Algar itself. Now here, it starts heating up. The remains of gods scattered across the battlefield pulse with an unseen light. Their echoes stir the Arathi, compelling them to fight, to kill for the world's dawn. Something is really weird here. Do you guys notice the old god parts are all over the place in Khaz'Algar? We got full laboratories of them, eyes, tentacles. None of this has ever been explained. Plus, if the 5th old god is really inside Beledar, he may be pulsing with an unseen light, as he is literally in a giant mountain-sized light prison. The positioning of the crystal even makes sense, as this is underground and old gods are usually a few zones deep themselves. Now, the last line of the prophecy is absolutely crazy. Amidst the chaos, the Forgotten One cried, when the last star fades, the Emperor's crown will weigh with sins of 1,000 years. The stalwart soldiers threw down their spears and wept tears of blood and burning anger. What does this even mean? I mean, the Forgotten One, first of all, not only does it sound like the old god names of Warcraft 3, but is this really the old god within the crystal? I mean, think about it. This is apparently the 5th old god, the Forgotten God, that was seemingly deleted from known history. However, what is this foreshadowing? When the last star fades, the Emperor's crown will weigh heavy with the sins of 1,000 years. Apparently, after this, the soldiers are angry and crying. The last star seems to be Beledar. When it fades, we're going to learn what the Emperor really did. I mean, what are these sins of 1,000 years? What has Thoradin the Ninth really done? I feel like this is not only foreshadowing for the end of this expansion, but the introduction of the Light Emperor himself. Remember some of the hints we had gotten so far in the game. The only thing we know about this empire is that they're very fanatical when it comes to the light, insanely devoted, although not all of them are as fanatical. They're apparently very rich, prosperous, powerful. They're based on a land we had not yet discovered, very likely Valoran. As you guys can see, they're very technologically advanced. Even more interestingly, we were told that the Emperor himself might not take too kindly to our kin, the various races we intermingle with, leading us to think they might be something close to like the Scarlet Crusade when it comes to thinking, and some theories have even connected them as potential allies. However, the end of the Arathi prophecy states that when the last star fades, very likely when Beledar loses the light, the Emperor's crown will weigh heavy with sins. Does that mean that all the sins he committed in the name of the light will be in vain? As it says, sins of 1,000 years. It is very likely for all the other Thoradins, as it refers to the crown of the Emperor, not just this Emperor in particular. I somehow feel like these guys are up to no good. They may not be the good guys we think they are. We may be dealing with a new Scarlet Crusade, just instead of like a dreadlord infested former band of paladins and thugs, these guys are a legit established powerful empire that may be a significant threat. Some people even speculate that as the light turns into the void naturally, the same could be said for the Emperor and his light empire might become a void one. Right now it is really impossible to say anything for certain, but this is very likely going to be midnight content. We're going to discover this empire, and I just have this feeling that these are not going to be one of the friendly factions we're just going to recruit along the way. Personally, I predict big civil strife between them. I think the ones close to the Emperor are going to be similar to Uriel's light fanatical army, where you're going to have the option to embrace the light or to no longer exist. Thanks for watching. Check out what the end of Zelda's prophecy means, and also subscribe to my raid channel by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time!